This is Janine DeMaria with pronalink.com. We are excited to bring to you this new video series presented by Marina Matraga. Marina had a very significant spiritual experience about 25 years ago, and she has spent the last 25 years researching to try to make sense of what she experienced. This video series is her explanations of what she experienced, and it pulls together a lot of very interesting topics. Some of what I have already studied in various modalities, but I've never seen it presented in this manner before, and it really connects a lot of dots. I can truthfully say that I probably understand about 80% of what she presents here, and there are some repetitions that go on that really help you understand what she's trying to present. And the other 20%, my brain is still kind of stretching to try to make sense of it for myself. But I do know that a lot of what she's saying here really resonates with me, and it is different than a lot of the belief systems that we have been raised to believe in this country. So I highly recommend that you, first of all, view the whole video series. And as you view it, if there's things that you don't understand or it doesn't fully resonate with you, write it down, jot it down, because we are intending to hold some question and answer series, live Zoom meetings to discuss these concepts. I'm sure that there's going to be some things that might not set completely with you, but don't stop watching, because there's some really, really interesting and significant concepts throughout these video series. And it's really our hope that we can get some really interesting dialogue and discussions around this with our community. So please make a commitment to watch the whole video series. And if you find things that don't make sense to you, or you don't fully understand, or even if you totally don't agree with, those are the kinds of things that will make our discussion very impactful and very interesting for everyone. So I hope that you will continue on this journey with us, and that you will watch the video series from beginning to end, and do plan to attend the Zoom meetings that we are going to organize around this material. Thank you again, and I hope you enjoyed this, because it's really, really fascinating to me, because I've never seen this material presented in this way before. So I hope to see you on our Zoom discussion groups, and thank you, and namaste.
Why do I name this Son of Man? When I was in high school, we were asked to write an essay about what it means to be, why do the Gospels mention Son of Man for Christ? And I wrote an essay, and then I don't even remember what it said, but the question stayed with me for life. And when I look at it from whatever maturity I have gained so far, my interpretation is that Son of Man talks to the work we need to do. We need to raise ourselves as humans out of the animal state of reactive behavior. And Christ comes as an example of what it means to be that. So, and on the other side, Son of God, we're all sons and daughters of God, right? So here we need to birth the human in us. So that's why the title. Now, serving the Earth's mission to love, I base that on something I read in Rudolf Steiner's work. And he claims that the mission of the Earth planet incarnation is to develop love. So we'll get into that later because this plays a big role into why we are where we are and what it is we need to do going forward. As an introduction to this presentation, I want to talk about active awakening. We are coming into 2000 years that be very challenging to us from a climate perspective and a world upheaval perspective. But it's also a time when a gateway opens where we can develop our free will and lift out of a sheer obedience. It's not bad to be obedient, but if everything we do, we look behind over our shoulders to see, do others approve? That's not a good thing. So we need to claim our authenticity and exit the world of lying. And we need to build, say, the faith in ourselves over and above belief on any personified deity. So in short, the question to ask is, am I behaving like a sheep? Can I become the shepherd of my essence? And how do we awaken this shepherd within? That's what we need to answer here. To awaken the shepherd within, we have work to do on ourselves. So that work involves rising as a charioteer who is able to harness our character weaknesses and align them to our character strengths. And the charioteer image comes from Plato. Socrates talks about running two horses. One is ruly and the other is unruly. And how do you keep the chariot on the road, right? And that's what it feels like to be working on different levels of our being. And then the other is to find our center of peace. And that means that we let go our circumference of drama. Because while we reside in that circumference, we are part of this, we experience a centrifugal force that keeps throwing us further and further out. And the only way to find our own peace is to find our own center. If you think of Shakespeare's Tempest, Prospero sits in that center. And it's a good way to imagine, how does he differ from the other characters? He sits in that center. So, and finally, we need to be looking for our salvation within ourselves. Nobody can offer it to us. It will not be delivered by a deity or a second coming or anything like that. We have to get there on our own. And we do that by awakening consciousness, which means that we go inwards to recognize the spirit that resides inside us. As we rise, we rise amassed, and that's where the word master comes from. So we rise to become a master when we live in presence. And it's presence that allows us entry to the spirit, which really is our superconscious etheric. And I want to emphasize this because it is that superconscious where we become master, and through it, we master our subconscious astral. So if you think of astral as dreams or meditation journeys that you're led to by others, it's all great, but it all takes your subconscious around. And I remember reading in Castaneda once that to really become a warrior spirit, you had to learn how to change your dreams while you're dreaming, right? What does that mean? You engage the superconscious to manage the subconscious. And we are all very comfortable dealing at the conscious level, which is the level of sense and measurable and everything around us that we can touch and feel and all share a similar experience about. But we are nowhere in control of the subconscious. And I don't think most of us are even aware of how to rise and develop our superconscious. So in this presentation, I align the superconscious with what I call our etheric or pneumatic body, which is ultimately the body that thinks, but also the body that wills and the body that feels. These are the three functions we operate in the etheric. And learning to become masters of all three is what this is about.
And is the etheric the connection with spirit?
Yes. The etheric is the scaffolding through which you reach spirit and spirit reaches us, right?
Another clarification. When you say we become masters when we live in the presence, is that similar to Ram Dass's philosophy of be here now, not to dwell on the past, not to think about the future, but just really being in the here and now?
Yes. And that's our present, right? Our present is a gift. It's a present.
Oh,
right?
present.
If
Like
we
present.
learn to live in it, right? Because the minute you dwell on the past or you worry about the future, you're out of presence. You're somewhere else fighting your subconscious, actually, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the more we realize that, the more we can get the reins and control that from happening.
And so will you be going into how we connect more with our super consciousness?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes. And the first thing to do is understand its structure. So what I'm talking about here is what is its structure?
Okay.
So you can recognize at all times where are you and where are you falling out of balance and what do you need to do to get back in balance?
Perfect.
So one thing I need to do before we go into all of that is take people away from the notion that the fall is about sin. It is not. It is about we enter the density of matter, which I call earth density here, in order to develop consciousness. And what is it? It's a classroom where everything happens slower so you can catch up with yourself and understand how to go about thinking, how to go about calculating, how to go about comparing. All of these things school teaches us to do. The problem is that that's all school teaches us to do, and we leave school without any notion of how to reach into our wisdom. And then if we join a denomination, it doesn't matter what denomination it is, we become part of that ethos and mythos, which is the myth around it, right? And again, that could have limitations because so much of that is man-made. And that's another thing to always ask, is what I'm hearing really a divine message, or is it a human interception of the divine message? So what in the West we call the original sin, the East calls the world's karma. It's the law of karma, right? So when you err on somebody, you have to pay that back, right? It's a similar notion, but we never make that connection, right? Because there's so much guilt imposed by the church, especially the Catholic, that we lose ourselves in the Christian mythology. We cannot arrive to its core message. So that's why I have this here. It's very important to understand it because it explains why we are here now. According to Rudolf Steiner, the Earth goes through multiple incarnations, and in the one we are now, the mission is to transform the wisdom that has been embedded in nature to love. And that's a very tall order. And I talk here about the different types of love as they are shown in Plato's Symposium. But there is yet another one that the ancients were not aware of. So you have motherly love, you have passion for your lover, you have friendship, and you have passion for wisdom, right? Those are the ones the ancients knew about. Agape is a word that shows up with Christianity, and it's a different notion in the sense that literally it means to lead upwards. So it's different from eros, it's different from friendship. It's something you do within yourself and then share with your community, the ability to lift upwards. And this love teaches us to ascend what I call our moral totem pole and what Christ calls the I am. So the reason this is important to know is because many people who follow the Buddhist path think that the secret to mastery is to let go the ego, that the ego is bad. So egocentrism is bad, but the ego is your identity, and it is your vehicle up. Without it, without having an individuality that you understand as I am, you cannot move up. So we need to be careful not to throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? So prerequisites for agape is this individuality, and to get the individuality to become a reality, a real notion, we needed to exit what is the shared architecture of the paradisiac existence. And you can enter that and feel it through your right mind. It's truly a shared architecture. Everything overlaps everything, and unless you are a master, you don't know how to navigate there. And to learn how to navigate there as an individual is part of what we have to learn to do. So in order to make all of that happen, we had to come out of paradise. And coming out of paradise, our complete human essence is split in two halves. And that gives rise to the myth of Adam and Eve. And you see that Eve is created out of a rib of Adam, right? It's a split that happens. And this happened way back in about the middle of the Lemurian period. So we are in a post-Atlantean period now. And 12,000 years ago, Atlantis still existed, and thousands and thousands and thousands of years before that, the Lemurian period took place. So the Lemurian is in the Pacific, the Atlantean is in the Atlantis, and both of them have sunk. We call this the fall. Why? Because our physical essence falls out of the spiritual. But what happens is it's not only in body that we're separated, it's also in soul. So our twin soul stays in the divine as we come into the physical. But most people don't know that. And instead of searching for the twin soul within themselves, they search to complete themselves through another person. And that's fine because it allows propagation to happen and evolution to be sustained, right? So the problem, though, that problems arise out of that fall, right? The story comes to be as the parental love, and that's all good. We have Eros that comes to be, and that's all good. However, the Philadelphia piece falls apart, and we see that early on in the Bible through the myth of Abel and Cain. And in fact, and you see this so strongly in Greek mythology, 4 generations go by and everybody's at war with everybody, right? So this made me question, why is war necessary? And I think it is necessary because it plants in us this need and passion for freedom, and we become fighters or warriors towards that freedom. So, and freedom is so important to develop in our makeup. Why? Because true love is only given through free will. And that's the catch, right? It's not like you can go to church and they tell you be nice and loving, and you come out of church and you're not nice and loving and you achieve true love, right? Because you're just obeying and something will come along and you'll forget about being nice and loving. You have to love out of free will. You cannot be forced into staying in love, or it needs to be given freely. Questions?
Yeah, well, not so much questions as, this goes back to bringing up a lot of the thought process between the pandemic that we had, and with that, the push of vaccines, and not only from the pandemic, but kids from school. When we were younger, we had 7 vaccines. Now they get something like 73. The way society is going and just how our schooling is, be good little soldiers, sit and listen, but how do they experience anything? How is, so is the Eastern world much different than us in their education and than the Western world? And the whole fact of the medical and things, what are they experiencing in just these couple of pages that you shared with us compared to what we are, the free will? The biggest thing that came across my mind, so someone has a baby, up until 5 years old, nowadays probably only up to 3, they're home with the parent, and from age 3 until 18 plus, they're in a step-by-step school process. And doesn't that teach them how they should be the same through the rest of their life? It just seems that our schooling system is molding them to be good little soldiers in society and to work and not to experience things so much. And why the battle between homeschooling is going on to traditional schooling is it just brought out a lot of that up for me in just what you shared.
And this is very true. What's happening right now, every front is being stressed to the edge
Mhm.
of doing it wrong.
Right.
And I'm hoping that this will help people awaken. But you cannot awaken through school. You have to awaken through your own determination,
But
right? Yeah.
if you think differently in school, you're ostracized, you're put aside, you're, just kids are trying to learn to express themselves, and are they really allowed to express themselves without judgment? And you know,
So
and
this
then
is it's to me, it's amazing that this is happening in the United States, because I grew up in Greece and it was all about obedience. And what I loved coming here is that you had the freedom to state your thinking. And nobody, I mean, in Greece, the professor tries to sell you his book, and if you don't buy the book, you don't pass the class, that kind of behavior, but it's happening here now.
right, exactly.
So I wonder a lot, why are we going backwards? And I think it is to bring the issue to the edge so it explodes open. It's not going to be pleasant. But are we doing it wrong? Absolutely, we're doing it wrong. Think about this. We grew up, at least I had all the children's diseases. I had the mumps, I had the whooping cough, I had the measles, the whole 9 yards,
I
right?
remember fever. Yeah, right.
And when you do that, you build character. So now we take that experience away, and we give vaccines instead, and then kids grow up to expect a push button life.
Right. Well, technology in itself is such good about it and such negative about it.
And everything is a double-edged sword, everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, I try not to get caught into the malaise that all that brings out, and it's a lot. I look back to how I was raised and how I became who I became, and I ask myself, is that even possible today? I don't know. But apparently there's a lot of souls who are born awake, and that's a difference. And it will cause a rift between the two groups.
Well, the push for
All I can
conformity is a push to maintain control. And I think more and more people are waking up to, because it wasn't as obvious maybe 10, 20 years ago, but it was there and it's built to this point. And now that it's got to the point of being very obvious to a lot of people, I'm hoping that wakes people up enough to become, as you, in your terms, the warrior for free will and the warrior for freedom. And maybe that's the reason why it's gone to such an extreme now, is to wake people up. So, kind of a pendulum swinging too far in one direction. Hopefully it'll swing it back, so people realize this, because in this need for control by whoever's trying to force this conformity on us, it's also disconnecting us from spirit. And the more we get disconnected from who we are, I know we're much more powerful than we're aware of, because of our indoctrination. But how do we wake that up in ourselves if you're forced to conform? So I think we have to break away from that chain of conformity, and recognizing this is happening to our children. People were trusting that the school systems were doing the right thing. And I think one of the benefits of the pandemic was people were seeing what the schools were feeding their kids, and now they're awake and they can do something about it.
Right. The other thing you need to get out of, though, is the way by which they succeed in imposing control is by spreading fear, right? That's what happens first.
Yes.
So you have to somehow not fall in that trap before you can do anything else. you have to overcome the fear.
That's
right?
what they did with the pandemic. And I don't think it'll work again. I think, there's a good group, there's still a group of people that, are still fearful. But I think there are more and more people that I'm seeing that looking around and saying, okay, the science doesn't really support this, I'm not going to be locked down again, for example. So, but I guess time will tell. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is exactly why I say war is necessary. It's necessary to make things so bad that you wake up and move out of it. And that's, we're going through that in spades right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so here I show pictorially what happens if you think of man in paradise being in a 7 chakra mode, right? The split is on the right hand side. So not only you split 3 of the chakras in 2, but you pluck away the 5th, and that's the myth of Adam swallowing the apple, right? The apple goes down into his system, and that apple is now moved to below the 1st chakra to chain us to the physical, right? So that's an etheric structure that people abide to. It's not just the schooling, it's in our structure that this has happened. So where do you go for safety? You go down, you go to what you can touch and feel, right? Well, because if you think about it, the red node, the 1st chakra is the mother nature place, right? So at least you'll go to your mother or to your home or to mother nature, but you're chained low. And that's a natural instinct to do that. Mm-hmm. And people who had a difficult time with their mother as kids face incredible problems later on, because that base chakra is not a foundation for them. It's a shaky ground. The split now that I talk about is not that the chakras split. What happened to the chakras is half of their petals were put to sleep. And then a lot of the Eastern systems teach you how to awaken those petals. That's the eightfold path that Buddha offers, is the 8 petals in the 5th chakra that need to be awakened, so you go back to 16. I will talk off and on about the astral side, which is the chakra side, but mostly I use the chakras as a definition of level because people are familiar with the 7 levels. But what I talk about is those etheric spheres that we experience in each level. So what happens now with the division introduces polarity, right? And the polarity offers the opportunity to address a level and step up to it, address it and step up to it, address it and step up to it. And I think this is how spiritual evolution goes on. We, as humans, may experience 13, 14 levels, but I don't know what happens when you're a higher spirit. You still need to evolve, right? Everything evolves. So it's probably happening that way. I don't know for sure, but it is for us. So I don't know if I need to go through. We'll talk about this again and again, but the 3 spheres that split in 2 are where we have the even numbered chakras. So the sixth chakras has to do with thinking, the fourth chakra has to do with feeling, and the second chakra has to do with willing, acting, creating, right? And these are the three functions that we have as spirit beings on earth. We're able to think, we're able to feel, and we're able to will ourselves into action. And these are the three levels where we need to be doing our work.
So this splitting of the chakras, is that what helps create the duality of Earth?
Yes. It's what creates duality in our perception of Earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why in the Bible they call it the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It's the tree of knowledge of duality. We have overemphasized the good and evil, and it has become a prison for us, right? Think of it as duality, and don't the way the Chinese do. For me, it was amazing to study the Chinese system because their yin and yang does not carry any notion of good and evil. One goes this way and the other goes the opposite way. End of story, right? That's how the universe operates. And there is no good or bad direction, right? It depends what you're after. It's always a matter of perspective. And this perspective is also why ancient initiation involved the zodiac. You go in churches in Europe and especially Greece, and you see the zodiac around the central dome, and you go like, why were they thinking the zodiac? Because in the mystery schools, one of the things they taught you was the different perspective. Don't judge, because your judgment depends on your perspective. And you move a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left, and your judgment will change because your perspective will change. So one of the things that took a long, long time to teach was how to go around and gain the entire perspective of all 12. And actually, this relates to why Christ had 12 apostles or followers, right? It relates why the four gospels are the four major perspectives of the zodiac. So Luke is Taurus, and John is Eagle or Scorpio. Mark is Leo. Matthew is Aquarius. And those are the four fixed signs which change the tropic around, right? Change the climate and the seasons, and you can think of them as the wheel that pivots the year. And it's called the Grand Cross in esoteric astrology, those four. So we don't know how many gospels there were, and for some reason those four made it in. And if you read them, they each have the perspective of that sign. So if you read Mark, it's all about kingdom of heaven, kingdom of earth. Why? Because Leo is the king sign, right? And it's all about man's suffering, and very different from Luke and John. So it's a very interesting thing to dive in and study, and it's easy to get lost in all the detail that comes with it. But anyways, perspective matters, right? All right. So I saw that internal structure inside me. And I drew it up and I took it to friends. I was living in Switzerland at the time, and one of them said, "Oh, that looks almost like the Kabbalah." But it wasn't the Kabbalah, because what I was seeing was the first presence, not the fallen presence. So I will go over the Kabbalah real quick. It's not something I have studied. I have taken a couple of classes in it to understand how the esoteric Hasidic community deals with it today. But the Kabbalah was a big thing. I mean, people like Da Vinci studied it, and all of alchemy in the 1400s studied it. It was, again, a way of understanding our esoteric makeup. So it is written up in extreme detail in what is called the Zohar. And basically the detail explains what happens in every one of these bubbles or spheres. I have not gone into that to study it because I was not so much concerned about our fallen structure, which is what the Kabbalah is. I was more concerned about explaining what I felt in the first presence, which is the beginning of the journey up. But what is important to see here again is how they have the central spheres and then a set of spheres on the two sides, and they correspond to the 6th, 4th, and 2nd chakra, the double ones. How the 5th one is missing, they call it the dot, and dot means seer. And what is the seer? Is the one within you who sees you, right? That's your upper self. But that's slumbering in the Kabbalah. And there is a line of separation that is felt, and that's how religion creeps into the universe as a way to replace that line or bridge that line. So if you see the line that separates the divine from the mundane, humanity tries to fill up through religion. And here, this is good for the handout. It will explain what the 10 sephiroth are. I don't think we need to go through them, other than that number 1 hooks you to the kingdom of nature, and the top one, number 10, is the crown, the center of the Divine Father. And this is how the Kabbalah aligns to the human body. And I show this only to say that when I saw our inner spheres, I was told they align to the body. Wherever we have something that happens in multiples or singles, you have a single center. And wherever you have duality, you have the doubles. So your face is symmetric. You have a right and a left eye, a right and a left brain. All of that is level 6. And then in your heart, you have the 4 chambers. You have the lungs that have 2 sides. You have the ribs, the arms. All of that is level 4. And then in the 2nd, you have the ovaries, the testicles, the legs, the kidneys, everything that occurs twice belongs to that 2nd level. But the uterus occurs once, the stomach occurs once, the liver occurs once, the spleen, all of these belong to the single levels, to the single spheres.
Can you explain what the domain of the daughter and the domain of the son means?
Yes. So obviously your top level is the level of the father, and your bottom level, not the Malkut, the one above it, is the level of the mother. So you go from father spirit to mother nature. But as we enter our journey of experience, the prodigal son leaves the kingdom of the Father and moves into the world to experience the world. And that is our third chakra. Our third chakra is our chakra of experience. We're experiencing and learning, and we could fall to the mercy of the world. The fifth chakra is the chakra that never leaves the house of the kingdom, is that upper self. It's the virgin side of you. Usually, because men describe their experience, they talk about a prodigal son and a virgin maiden in distress, the fifth, right? That could reverse itself for the female, where you have a prodigal daughter and a virgin son. So I'm just using the classical nomenclature that comes from a masculine society. But the idea again is that you need both, right? You need the experience. It's not that one is good and the other is evil. You need the experience, and you need to stay hooked to the spiritual and the divine so you don't forget them. But the two don't communicate until you overcome that line of separation, which means go up that central mass. So here I talk a little bit because of back to the notion of original sin and all that. There is two levels to karma. There is the world karma, and then there's the individual karma. So when we say that Christ comes and lifts the sin of the world, we're talking about the world karma. He removes the need for karma for the world, okay? That doesn't remove karma for the individual. The individual must do that themselves. The individual must, through what in Judeo-Christian is the water baptism, come to a cleansing state where their past doesn't hold them down, right? Because at this point, it's all inside us. It's all our perception of the past that holds us down. Actually, everything that holds us back is produced in us by us, or by our inherited beliefs and all of that. But it's all in us to clean up. It's like no different than cleaning up a room where you have accumulated a lot of turmoil in and outside the drawers, right? You need to go in and do that cleaning up. And this is the work that we're talking about. But again, I just want to show the equivalency to the Eastern system. So I help people get away from this, oh, I bear the original sin. No, you don't. Karma was necessary because it was a teacher, right? For centuries, you had to learn what it meant to behave a certain way. And that's why karma was there. But it's not there anymore if you choose to exit that thinking. If you choose to stay in that thinking, yeah, it's there, but it's there at your individual level, not at the world level. So what the Kabbalah teaches is that really you have to take charge of your second level, where you have all of these desires and you have all of these wishes to hate somebody or take revenge on somebody, or urges, right? And you move and discipline them. So you balance out that level, and it doesn't become this loud noise that you always fall victim to. So you discipline your urges. And by doing that, you're slowly awakening the fifth, because it's the fifth that is the charioteer of the second. The important thing to remember is that there is certain things that hold us back that are very obvious. Lies are one of these things. Every time you lie, you fall below the second. So learning not to lie, and it's a very difficult thing to do because it's very convenient to lie most of the time, right? Learning not to lie is paramount. And seeing people who lie, they have no essence above the second. They're not there above the second. And what is left? The first. And what is the first? Control, right? If you want, you can think of the Kabbalah as the structure in which our spirit waits to awaken. And it's very interesting because in the Greek churches, what we call basilica, which means kingdom, they have that front room for the people who are not ready to be Christians yet. It's a waiting hall room called prothalamos. So in antiquity, before Christ, there is the rite of initiation that becomes the way for people to awaken the mask of individuality. And that is strenuous. It requires 33 hours of near-death experience in which your etheric body separates enough from your physical so you can realize that you're not just physical, you have another essence that is spiritual. So as the age of Aries moves in, it becomes almost deadly to put people through these near-death experience, because the density of our body has increased so much that it's hard to pull people out. And actually, part of what Christ had to do several times was bring people back from the dead. That doesn't mean they were dead through an initiation ritual that they couldn't revive out of. So again, Steiner explains that the mystical deed of Christ is that he takes the rite of initiation and does the 33-hour near-death condition for everyone. So each and every one of us can proceed and move up into the pole of the I am without needing that kind of ritual. But Christ could not move us into first presence, because that restoring the fifth must happen through free will. So what he does is he opens the road for us to rise to the third. And that gives us entry into thinking and science and all that evolved after Christ came on earth. Before that, to be a scientist, you had to be an initiate. You could not just go study and become a scientist, because humans could not operate their physical brain yet. It wasn't, I mean, we think of it as no big deal now. Actually, it's louder than anything. It wasn't possible back then. You could not do that without going through initiation and all the pivoting that needed to happen for you to realize, how do I operate my inner mind? Because, you know, being in atavistic clairvoyance, you're always in touch with the outer mind, the cosmic mind. So if when people tell you, oh, why are you so absent-minded? It's because you're out there with the outer mind, right? That's what it meant to be an ancient. You could not focus and concentrate until you took the rite of initiation. So he opens us part way, and that I will show you the picture in a minute. That is what allows us to begin rising in the pole and begin to think and be rational. And that's why Christ is also called the Logos, right? Because Logos does not only mean word, it means reasoning. He gives us the ability to reason.